Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your favorite podcast where we get to give you the latest and the trending business issues to help you grow your business and make solid decisions on the next move your business needs to take based on the current information that is in the market. And I'm joined by the usual Mr. Jerry.
Hi, how are you, Mr. Steve?
I'm great. And
Captain
welcome.
Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. And before we start, I would like to apologize.
By the way, there's a word which I was reading on, must be CNBC, an American news network. It's an American news network, I think.
Yeah.
So they're actually saying, I once heard about it that never say to someone, how are you?
Okay, what do you say instead of how are you?
They say it when you're saying, how are you? The person who is asking don't really care.
Okay.
Whether you're okay or not. The person who is also answering doesn't care whether they are actually telling you the truth. To say they're never going to tell you the truth whether they're okay or not.
Because there's a standard response to it.
Yeah.
So what do you say instead?
So they're actually saying you need to ask, or they would rather say, how have you been? Is better than to say, how are you?
But still,
or they actually,
how have you been?
Or they're saying, no, we need to say good afternoon, good evening. Because at least if you say good evening, it's good evening.
That's You're
not asking them a question.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'll send you the article, by the way.
Absolutely. And also maybe you can link it down in the description so that our viewers can also get to look out for it. And then before we get started, we'd like to apologize for the previous video that we posted. We had put up a challenge that is in the last minutes of the video, but unfortunately when we uploaded the video, we forgot to turn on the comments. So the comments were pretty much turned off for the duration of that video. So I'm sure you would have loved to comment and come through so that you stand a chance to win the book. But then unfortunately the comments were turned off. But I hope with this production we will definitely turn them on. So yeah, we can still carry on the challenge to this week's video. Otherwise, welcome. So yeah, today I was analyzing, there's a time when things are happening so fast, things are just moving. And then you are also moving along with the things to a point where you lose a sense of direction. And then sometimes you just have to pause for a minute and then look at things from a far away point of view so that you can get the bigger picture. I did the same thing because I was trying to look at how the rates are running away. This was after I had written an invoice to a client. And funny enough, I'd give them both invoices, one for the greenback and one for the local currency. The one for the greenback, I told them they can pay after 45 days.
Exactly.
And then the one for the local currency, I told them it was going to expire after 6 hours.
6 hours.
So when I was looking at it, I was trying to understand how we are having to follow the rates and how they are running away as fast as they are from the interbank rate even. It's running away. And then you look at the shadow market as well, it's running away. So, and then you look at what the government has been trying to do, the efforts, the constant release of press statements, policies, all these economic statements that they're trying to make to manage the macroeconomic activities. And then I thought to myself, can the government really micromanage the economy? Can they really control the market? You have been a vendor, how you would navigate policies. One day council would say we don't want to see vendors here, but the next day you find yourself in another spot and everything. So the question is, can the government really control or tame the market?
Thank you for that question, Steve. I don't think even when you're talking about moving from another point to another point, as vendors would go back to the that same place where you have actually said you don't want people, that's where we would go. So the thing is, yes, as a vendor, we broke many laws, many city council bylaws, hence sometimes we're arrested, sometimes we're not even arrested. So what I would like to say is there's no way you can control people by actually imposing something on them. I understand the plight of the government. I understand that there's no father who would want his children to suffer. There's no father who would want his children to go hungry. So I believe the government is making efforts, but I don't think that is the proper way of controlling these running away rates. What I think is they would have let the market to determine the rate. So if you notice that the moment the interbank is trying to follow the black market rate, the black market rate is actually running away from the what? From the interbank rate. Because why? I strongly feel, I once said this on ZFM, I strongly feel that the country doesn't have the conducive environment where we can actually have our local currency in place. I think we were in a hurry when we reintroduced our Zim dollar. We should have stayed using the multi-currency regime. I'm not necessarily saying we should use the US dollar. I'm also saying we can even use the Chinese currency. Or we will let the market determine the currency which they want to use and leave it like that. Because the market forces are the ones which are supposed to be controlling the community, the country or the economy, not to have people trying to push certain SIs, trying to push people. Because the moment they are being arm twisted, the moment, because it's like when you're controlling even a kid, the moment you start saying a kid, you start beating a kid, the other time they are going to notice or they are going to be used to the beating. And hence it becomes also a song. Imagine if your mom, when you're young, they're always saying, I'll beat you, I'll beat you, I'll beat you, I'll beat you. You know that, or even when they're actually beating you, you know that, no, I think my mother is going to beat me. But after 1 hour, I would have healed. So I would rather go and break the law, come back in the house, you're beaten.
And after 1 hour,
everything comes back to normal. Yeah, so I strongly feel that, yes, as the government is trying to control this running away market rate or the currency, the inflation, they're trying to impose some other restrictions. I think they've also said in today's newspaper, I think it was yesterday's newspaper, which was actually saying you can now get jailed for manipulating the currency.
I saw that too.
Yeah, but the question is, are they going to walk the talk? Number one. Number two, are they going to also implement it holistically? Are we going to also say everyone who is going to manipulate the currency is also going to face the music? That's the $1 million question. Because the moment the government says they put something like that to the market, and the market is listening, the moment someone is going to manipulate the currency and they get away with it, what is going to happen? If they are not jailed, it means many people are going to follow. Yeah, so I don't know your side. How do you see it?
I've always found it interesting that they want to follow and micromanage, like more like helicopter parenting, where they are a bit over involved, and I think they're overdoing it. In as much as they want the common good, I think there's a certain level where they just need to cut back and allow the market to decide, like you're rightfully saying. And I've always found it interesting that who changes the shadow market rate or the black market rate? Who influences that? And I also saw one of these pastors was just preaching, and they were making a passive joke saying there's a group of educated guys who draft the policies, and then they use the market forces to determine the current rate at which the local currency should trade against the US dollar. But then there's some uneducated guy by Copacabana. All they just need to do is to agree and say, guys, that's the Ribamari. And then you just wake up and the rate is something else. So yeah, it's comments like those that help you understand the dynamics of the animal that we are trying to tame. But in that same basket, you and I are both enthusiasts for marketing and sales, right? I wonder, because currency, I would like to believe that the local currency, let's say it's a product by the central bank. How do they sell it? Say we put you in the governor's position. How would you sell the Zimbabwean dollar to the market? How would you sell it?
Personally, if I was going to be the Reserve Bank governor, what I would do first is to consult the people who are doing that. You would rather invite the guys. I think they once had a consultation where they invited the guys who are in the streets. Instead of arresting them, they would rather sit down with them. What is really happening with our currency? Who is determining the rates? Who are the players in the market? And Because we are trying to treat symptoms, but we are not treating the what? The root cause of this problem. Well, these are just symptoms. When you see the rate running away, it's a symptom. When you see a company, big companies, blue chip companies, going to the black market and try to purchase the green bag, it simply means that's a symptom. It because through the actual means they're supposed to get, or through the official means they're supposed to get that green bag, they're failing to do that. Hence they resort to the black market. So it's just simple. I think we need to consult the companies, you need to have captains of the industry, you need to have the players who are actually buying that currency from the black market. Consult them, ask them, what can we do? Yes, if we've got our gold, are we really accounting for our gold at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe? That's another question. Number two, are we having all our minerals accounted for so that our currency should have minerals which are actually supporting that? When we now have a lot of minerals, which you need to remember, even we are not like USA. USA can go and print US dollar against nothing. Because they are the ones who are they are the referee in that kind of market. So those guys, they can just go and print as much as US dollar. I think they've printed some.
Yeah,
they are printing trillions and trillions of them, but theirs who always have a power than when we try to print money this side.
Of course.
Because they are the ones who are controlling the exchange rates. Remember, when Zambia needs to trade with Zimbabwe, USA is involved. We cannot trade to each other using a kwacha. We cannot trade to each other using a Zim dollar. We will need the US dollar factor for us to trade between, even for us to trade with China. We cannot trade with China using a yuan. We have to resort back to their US dollar. So that's where the policy is unfair. So unfortunately, for us as Zimbabweans, we have to know that for us to start saying we are now printing our own money, we really need to print that money against something. Right now, I don't feel that we've got enough resources to support our local currency. Hence, I think you've heard that. I think there was someone who was actually saying the money which is circulating currently in the bank, if everyone is going to withdraw their money in Nostro, do we have the capacity to fund everyone currently?
I don't think so.
As we look at things, I don't think so. So the issue is about when I think we hurriedly introduced the Zim dollar. We should have waited until all the environment is now conducive, because there are a lot of factors involved. Someone would like to, yes, it depends with where you are coming from. Someone would argue and say, if we are going to use US dollar only, or if you are going to use this, I don't want to say US dollar only. What about if you vouch for the yuan? What about if you vouch for the BRICS currency, which is being used in Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa? We can use our rand, we can use our Russian currency, we can use our Indian rupee. Let us use it. Let us throw it in the basket. But remember, in 2009, when Minister Chinamasa introduced the US dollar, the multi-currency regime in February 2009, just before the GNU. Remember, we're using rand. We're using pula at that point. We're using, I think we use rand, pula, US. But the market chose US.
Just naturally chose the USD.
So let the market choose what it needs. That's my point, and I'll stick to that.
And also, you mentioned one critical point that I feel needs some emphasis and a look with another eye. You said that the US, because they are trading in their own currency, they can print it against nothing.
Exactly.
So I strongly think let's try and shift our mentality as Africans and try and create a basket of our own currencies that we can use to settle transactions with each other. Because as long as we look to the West to use their currency, we are always going to be in trouble. Here's why. Like you rightfully pointed out, they can print money against nothing and have productivity and projects funded using money printed against nothing. But if we use the greenback for our projects, we have to do physical work and back money that was printed against nothing with real substance.
Exactly.
So that we can pay back the loans. So I strongly believe that as Africans, it's high time we open our eyes and try to create a basket of our own currencies that are independent from the West, and even have our own payment platforms that do not rely on the Western technologies to settle transactions, so that we can trade amongst ourselves. I don't see a reason why we cannot trade with Zambians without involving the Americans. Why we cannot trade with the South Africans. In fact, I remember the Minister of Finance and Economic Development, Dr. Mutuli, Professor Mutuli actually, he said that 80% of our trades are between Zimbabwe and South Africa. So how come we then use the USD to settle 80% of the transactions that we are doing between South Africa and Zimbabwe? So yeah, those are some of the mind-boggling questions that we need to ask ourselves. And you can also be part of the conversations. Let us know in the comment section how we can address the demand for our local currency, so that we are not short in the foot when we use a reserve currency that will in turn burn us out when we eventually have to pay the loans and everything else that we use on credit using the reserve currency. Otherwise, we'll see you on the other side of this podcast. Don't you move an inch. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. Welcome back to your favorite podcast. This is now the second and final segment of this podcast, and we're now delving into a different issue altogether. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe, share, and like the videos. It really helps out a lot. And also participate in the comment section, as that will enable us to decide on topics that you want to hear on the next episode. Otherwise, welcome back.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
Yeah.
And, before the break, we were talking about currencies and stuff. But then there's another thing that is playing out in the local market, and I find it to be very interesting. Have you noticed that the moment you see a building blocked out, they put the asbestos and the wood, the timber, and then they isolate it as a construction site? Definitely beyond any reasonable doubt that the moment it opens, it's now a shopping mall. Either clothes sold in there, or it's food.
Like what you're saying, I passed through the State House this other day, and I saw that it was now closed. They closed the Jurao to show that there's construction, and there's construction undergoing there. So I noticed. Then I was about to say, isn't it they want to also build a mall at the State House?
They could possibly do that, because I've seen a lot of shops in town, generally in Harare. If you talk of Harare, I've seen a lot of shops that have closed and then they've opened up as what's really happening? Is it a problem, or it's actually an evolution of our town as we know it? Because if it's an evolution, I've got problems with that. We are going to run out of convenience stores and have a bunch of clothing lines and clothing shops, but without the other facilities. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a food road by along Julius Nyerere, just by Joina City, that area. There was a food road, and food road, I want to commend them for being one of the shops that open early. You are guaranteed if you get into town 7 a.m. They will have opened. You can get something and grab your food and you go to work.
But they've closed
down that convenient branch. And guess what? It's now a shopping mall. They're selling clothes, phones, chargers, and and it's not the only one. Kingston's, they closed out. And what are they now when they closed out?
They are shops.
It's a shopping mall.
That one is worse, because they sound even the barber shops, the saloon.
You see now.
Phones.
You see now.
Clothes.
And there's another one by which street is this? I'm forgetting the name of the street, but just opposite Angwa City, there was QV Pharmacy. They had a big pharmacy area where you would get your cosmetics, your makeup, your over-the-counter drugs, your prescription drugs, and I think they even had a mini consultation space. So they closed that one out. And to my surprise, I think it's Diamond Pharmacy that moved in. They occupied a very small space. There's now a bar that sells alcohol during office hours. Like, it's in the heart of town. It's selling alcohol from morning till, I don't know, they're selling alcohol. And then next door to it, they've opened grocery shops. It's just like your shops down there.
And you also wonder, how did they got the license to sell alcohol?
Exactly.
I was also surprised, if you remember, I think this corner, Samora Machel and First Street, there's now a hardware.
Yeah,
they've changed
I
even.
saw it too.
We're not allowed to park. Now there's now parking
There's
space.
no parking space.
Because there's a hardware in First Street.
I know, right?
Imagine having a hardware in the Wall Street in America. That's what we have now.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so I don't know our city fathers.
You know, someone can argue and say, yo, it's still business. But I think there's need to validate the nature of businesses that can be executed in the CBD, because for all we know, someone is going to open something in the CBD. And also, this one I've noted with concern. During lunchtime, there are buildings that are vacant. Of course, you know, people are migrating to peri-urban or those peripheral towns. I mean, peripheral areas, suburban areas around Harare, like your Milton Park, your Belvedere, your Eastleigh. People are migrating there. I don't know, maybe the convenience for parking and stuff. But the buildings that have been left vacant, they're being used by churches. And lunchtime, just adjacent to a bank, an executive bank, there are people praising and worshiping, playing loud music in the heart of the CBD. I can imagine a scenario where you're having maybe investors from South Africa, you know, and you're having a meeting, you know, a high-level board meeting, but then your boardroom is adjacent to a building that is being used as a church.
Shouting, I receive.
And people are shouting, I receive.
Fire, fire, yeah.
Man of God. You know, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a disaster, because I think we moved from a situation whereby we're objective as a country. If you notice, even during the colonial era, it was a taboo for you to see us vendors in First Street. But right now you can now see someone who is actually buying their maize cobs
in First Street.
First Street, fire, close to a building, close to people's cars. So I think it's now about the city council looking for money rather than putting sanity in the CBD. I think you can now have even, I think there was now some people, they were still selling clothes like what they do in Baremsika. I think that is close to Chinoi Street.
Yeah.
So people are now doing whatever they want because it's now all about money. It's never now about do these people, like Samora Machel, that's our Wall Street of Zimbabwe, do we need to have other players who are doing funny business in Buddy House? Do we need to have people who are doing funny business in these buildings which are actually in the heart of the town? That's why you're also noticing that most of the people, it's rare. Yes, we can call it racism, or we can call probably it's racism, but if you ever noticed that most of the times when things goes a bit, when you want to see that your business is okay, it attracts people of different races, especially the white people.
That's true, yeah.
So if you notice, right now the town, it's rare to see a white guy in town. Rare cases where you're going to see a white guy walking in town. Rare cases where you're going to see a Chinese guy walking in town. Rare cases where you're going to see an Indian guy walking in town, unless if he's got a business in town. And most of them, they're actually running away from the CBD, going out to Belvedere. Some are going to Boredo, some are going to Avondale. It's because it's no longer about we need certain tenants at a certain place. It's all about we now need to occupy the space.
They are so obsessed with the occupation of the spaces in town, to a point where, do you know that sometimes when you like where you parked your car right now, during the week it serves as a car park. If you come over the weekend, especially on Saturday, sunset and Sunday, you find that it's a show. It's a shopping space. There are people who come and set up vending stores where they sell clothes, food, fruits, and everything. You just find it being sold in a car park, and then you wonder to say, is this really what we want for our CBD, for our towns, for our capital cities, or for our provincial capital cities? Is that really what we want? Because really, it's taking a toll in terms of even the evaluation of properties. Do you know such activities, in as much as innocent as they may seem, they actually devalue the value of certain properties. Because if somebody tells you that you put a shop underneath that building, and I don't know, for some weird reason, who told Zimbabweans that if you're selling clothes you need to play radio, loud music? You know, if you go to other countries, in any shopping mall,
it's supposed to be quiet.
It's quiet. You can hear yourself talking to the shop attendant. They can assist you. But in Zimbabwe, they were playing loud music, and you know when you want to see the insanity of the situation, when a new album comes out from their favorite artist, they will play it
the whole town,
and everyone is playing the same song but at different times. And now you're coming to this shop, they're playing the same song. Like there's chaos.
And you can even not ask what you cannot even inquire what you really want, because people are playing loud music.
I know.
It's a messy, because even when I noticed, if you visit countries like Zambia, Botswana, there are certain brands which are seen in these shopping malls. They are very protective because they know. That's why there's that vetting process, whereby if you wanted a lease, you'd apply, send your documents, send your bank statements. Nowadays, it's about, do you afford to have that office? So whatever you're going to do, whether if you're going to sell daga, whether if you're going to sell mtoriro, they don't care. What they want is their rentals. So long if you're paying rentals, we're good to go. So I think we really need to look at it as the government as well. I understand there's poverty. I understand the country is going through a lot. But sometimes if we relax these laws, it will also even make difficult for it is very difficult even for the even Zimra. How are they going to collect their taxes? NASA, how they are going to collect their fees? So it's a problem. Like what you're also saying, a building which was supposed to be costing $1 million, it will certainly drop its value. So just think of it, a nice building like Joina City. It's a nice, a good building. I think that's one of our best buildings in town. But is it going to have its value which it's supposed to have when someone from Borodobrook is saying, I've never stepped into in Joina City? When someone from Chisipiti is saying, I'll never get to Joina City, not because they don't want to be in Joina City, but they're looking at the surrounding areas because they are blocked. You cannot get into Joina City peacefully. You're going to meet those guys at Zimex Mall who will be disturbing you. You're going to meet a lot of vendors surrounding that place. Yes, as much as you'd like vending to be done, but I think it's supposed to be done in a way which can be sanitized.
Talk about the car parks being occupied by taxis. You know that most of the car parks in Harare, they've slowly turned into ranks for taxis. You would find a taxi parked in a space, a commercial space, and then you wonder, did they really pay for the parking to be there all day, or maybe it's something shady happening? So yeah, those are some of the issues that we are facing. And maybe going forward, do you see potential in terms of the retention of tenants in our city buildings?
I'm also thinking of moving out. The thing is, because of the clients, they are no longer, when also our cities were created, I think we've inherited in infrastructure which didn't, we never thought that we were going to have this number of cars, plenty of them in CBD. We now have a lot of cars. People have tried putting one-way streets, but I think we still have congestion in the CBD. I think, yes, decentralization of the CBD can only be done if the government is also going to decentralize services which they provide on government level. Number one, you look at Zimra, our tax authority. These guys, they're only in town. Why can they not put Zimra in Highglen? Why cannot they put Zimra in Borodale Brook at Semi-Levy? Why can't they put Zimra in Rua? So it means when I want to pay my taxes, when I want to interact with Zimra, there's no need for me to get into town. Why can the registrar of companies be found in Borodale? Why can't the registrar of a company have an office in Avondale? This is the way they can only decentralize the CBD. Why can't the banks also start being, because right now most of the banks are in CBD. They're not there in the high density areas. Why can't we start having our cabs in Budiriro, because they've got clients there? So that's what I think that is what is going to decentralize the city, because people are coming into the city because they know that that's where most of the people are, because where there are most of the people. Certainly, I'm a vendor. I'll never sell my items where there's no congestion, because where there's people, there's money. So it means if they decentralize the town, when more people are now going to Highglen, vendors will also start being attracted to put their marketing stores in Highglen. They are no longer coming to the CBD. So that's the only solution. Most of our service providers are only centralized in town. I still remember when I was talking to the EcoCash guys, and they were saying, I'm supposed to fill in the form. I had a challenge with their MasterCard. And they were saying I was supposed to have a what? Fill in the form, apply, send that form. You have to go with that form physically to your Econ shop.
In this day and age.
In this day and age. And they're the ones who are advocating for technology. And I was saying, why can't I just fill this on my phone? Or at least send an email? So I was saying, what about if I'm out of the country and I've got a problem with your MasterCard, and they're telling me that, and I want to use that money, and they're telling me to visit your Econ shop? How does it operate that way? So not even the government only, the private players also, they are centralized in CBD. Hence, everyone has to come into the CBD. Why can't you copy from Zambia? Zambia, most of their service providers are decentralized. You can find most of their companies out of the CBD. Hence, there's no need of getting into the CBD.
I think maybe some of the reasons that you are stating and some of the issues that you've had with our private companies is a lack of strong competition. You know, when a business becomes a monopoly, or it becomes sort of like a gatekeeper to the industry in which it operates in, the tendency to offer sluggish service, and you know, because there's no competition. It's like that one guy who knows that they can outrun everyone.
Exactly.
They don't come to practice. Have you noticed the arrogance that comes with some of these youngsters who are into sport? When they know they're exceptionally good, they don't really want to practice.
Even at work.
Yeah, if you feel like you're good at what you do, you then become complacent. I've actually heard some stories where one of these guys from this company, they were explaining to me how they've got this guy who knows what he does, but he only comes to work when he wants. You know, this person came to you and you had an interview, they were asking for a job. Now you have to ask him to come to work to do the job that you're paying them to do. And you know,
you're now under hostage.
Yes.
It's a hostage situation.
And I know you're very popular for saying that never make the mistake of hiring someone whom you can't fire.
Exactly. Exactly, yeah.
That's very interesting. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of this podcast. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and thank you for coming to this point. Do remember to subscribe, share and like, and we still have our challenge from the previous episode. We are carrying it forward. You can stand a chance to win any of these two books, the first one or the second one. All you have to do is come in the comment section and just comment out on any of the content or the subject that we have discussed. And if we like your comment, then you can stand a chance to win this book. Otherwise, from me to you, it's a goodbye.